Okay, so I'm I'm not even gonna lie. I really dreaded reading this week's chapter of Black Clover because it filled me with so much fear and anxiety. Like the moment we found out that the girl's plan to defeat Vanica didn't work, with each passing new page after that, all the way up until the very last page of the chapter, I was just so afraid and so nervous and hesitant to go to the next page to read the next page because I didn't know what was going to end up happening to one of the five girls. I didn't know what would happen with each passing page, whether or not one of the five girls would end up dying on that next page. And it just really scared the hell out of me. And and it really did work me up and give me some little bit of anxiety reading the chapter for the first time, which is very rare for me. I usually don't get this worked up and anxious reading manga, even when I'm watching or even when I'm reading a psychological horror manga. I don't get this worked up and anxious over what's going to happen to a character that we're reading about. And I feel like because of the fact that I don't really get attached to characters in psychological and horror series, that even when the author is building up suspense of whether or not a character is going to end up dying in the chapter or they're going to die in the very next page, it doesn't really affect me that much. As opposed to this, where even though it's just like a shonen series, because of the fact I've become so attached to these characters, especially Laura Patika, she gave me the most anxiety and fear throughout the entire chapter. Because Tabata has done such a great job since her introduction of making me fall for the character, making me love the character, love all her quirkiness. I've really become a big fan of Laura Patika. And then when you look at the last chapter where she was so emotional and so just raw about the fact that she is afraid to die, it became such even more of a gut punch in the chapter when you realize all her planning, all the attempts that she made, knowing that this was going to be the last time she will ever have a chance of saving her own life. To know that plan failed and then had to spend the entire chapter dreading, is this going to be the moment where she finally dies? Thinking that throughout the entire chapter honestly just ate away at me so good. Tabata did such a great job with this chapter, making me actually be afraid for these characters, and I hate them for it. Now, real quick before I get into the rest of the chapter, I do want to mention that the reason why we got this chapter a week late is because of the fact that Tabata last week was actually recovering from either an illness or an injury. I'm not exactly sure. Now, obviously, it wasn't, the big illness that everyone's worried about right now, because that would take a lot longer than a week to recover from if he did end up recovering at all. Nah, more likely he had just a very bad cold or maybe a very, very, very minor injury that he just needed a week off to heal. And now he's back, and you know what? I think taking the week off actually did give him more time to do a better job when it comes to illustrating this chapter, because when you look at the way this chapter is drawn, each and every panel does such a great job of actually conveying the emotion and the despair that these characters are in, especially when it comes to Laura Patika. Each entire panel after she realizes that her plans failed just shows you just how afraid this character actually is of the situation she finds herself in. And I honestly, if we're just talking, not even counting the story, not even counting the dialogue or the way this chapter is written, if you're honestly just looking at the art and the way Tabata did such a great job with it, I would honestly count this as one of my top 10 chapters. So at the beginning of the chapter, we literally pick up where the last one left off, with Nero sealing Vanica with her magic. And at first it looks like it actually does work until Warburtika checks her curse and realizes that it's actually not disappearing, it didn't vanish. Which basically leads them to believe, alright, so they didn't seal Vanica. And then honestly, Vanica ends up breaking out of the magic and actually does kind of wreck everyone else. And this is when we get the big reveal of the chapter that Vanica has basically gone beyond her 70% and actually basically fused herself with Mikikuo. Basically, they've come off with this white and black look where half of Vanica's body is the all black form of Megikuo taking control, and the other half is Vanica in her normal form, and she's basically sharing her body with him. And the second I saw it, it reminded me heavily of that mascot character from the game series Danganronpa, I think it's called. I never actually played the series myself, but I've seen the logo and the mascot for that series a lot over the years, and the second I saw Vanica in Megikuo's fused form, It really reminded me of that. And now, obviously, because of the fact that we've seen Vanica in this form now and seen exactly how extremely more powerful this form is compared to even her full power 70% form as of last chapter, we can pretty much assume that each of the Dark Triad members, and most likely also Asta at some point, will be able to use this form. I'm sure the Dark Triad members actually can already use this form, we just haven't seen them do it just yet. And at some point, Asta and his anti-magic demon will eventually gain this form for themselves. But when it comes to Asta getting this form, I feel like we're going to have to actually get an arc, just kind of like how we got the little bit of, or the few chapters in Naruto, where Naruto had to basically confront the Demon Fox and kind of, the two of them had to kind of come to terms with each other and basically decide to work together unanimously. I feel like we're going to have to get that same kind of arc with Asta in order for him to activate this form, because in order to activate this form, you would have to obviously trust your demon partner and be able to share the body with them so that the two of you can act as one. Because otherwise, it will just end up being AMD controlling Asta's body completely by basically completely taking it over instead of just sharing half his body with him. And I mean, of course, when you're looking at this form, the question basically becomes, well, why only take it to this step? Why not just take it to the next step, which would be the demon completely possessing the body? And when it comes to Vanica and the Dark Triad members, the answer is really obvious. It's because of the fact that when the demon takes over their body, more than likely that means that the demon's only able to access their own magic. So Megikuo could only access his magic and not Vanica's magic as well. But by sharing the body half and half, they both have access to the most powerful versions of their own magic and are able to combine them in better ways. And when it comes to AMD, it probably does make a lot more sense for him to just completely take over the body instead of sharing it with Asta, because obviously Asta doesn't have his own magic. But it could benefit for AMD to actually share the body with Asta, or share the mind at least with Asta, versus just completely taking it over, because Asta has been proven to have this stubbornness and this stick-to-itiveness that gets him through battles even in situations where he should ultimately end up losing. And AMD could possibly end up benefiting from that. We don't know that much about AMD's personality, so for all we know, he probably doesn't have the same kind of drive and stubbornness that Asta has in fights. Maybe AMD's more quick to give up, and because Asta and him would be sharing a body, he could possibly be pushed to continue fighting in hopeless situations because of Asta, and end up achieving a newfound power or getting the victory because he just didn't end up giving up. So I just went on that whole rant about the new form, and I completely forgot what I was originally going to talk about, and that is the fact that Narrow Seal didn't work. And we find out from Megikuo and Vanica in the chapter that the reason why it didn't work is because they used it too late. Vanica and Megikuo had managed, once Vanica used 70% of her power, to activate a spell that basically weakened any magic that would be used against them that would basically kind of seal them or kind of hinder them in any way. And because of this, the sealing magic that Nero used on them ended up not being effective enough to actually seal them away. And it was actually kind of a gamble, as he says in the chapter, because he wasn't exactly sure if the magic they used would actually end up working against an arcane stage mage, but obviously ended up doing that. So they were able to break out the seal and basically destroy everyone else just by doing that. Which really leads me to the same question I had in the last review. Why did they have to wait till Vanica went full power in order to actually use that trap that they had planned on? Because there was nothing in the last chapter. I even went back and checked the official chapter release, and nothing in their description of the plan actually stated why they needed to wait until Vanica actually used the full power. I mean, sure, they mentioned the fact that they wanted to basically weaken her or drain her of her power, but it's because of the fact that they waited until she did activate her full power that the plan did end up working. So I'm wondering, why not have activated that plan as soon as Vanica entered the room? Why not use Narrow Seal magic as soon as they found Vanica? Because one thing that Megikuo mentions is the fact that if they had lasted just a little bit longer, if the seal had lasted just a little bit longer on them, then they probably would have actually been able to steal her. And I mean, we don't actually know how much a little bit longer actually means. It could have been a few minutes, it could have been a few seconds, we don't know. But if it was a few seconds, then that precious time that it would took Vanica to, activate her devil form and then go to the full power, possibly in those few seconds that it would took her to actually do that, if they had used the trap from when she first entered the room, that possibly would have been enough time for them to actually finally seal her away, which means the threat that they had, the biggest threat they had against Laura Pachica would have been gone right there. So yeah, it's really kind of frustrating that this plan, like they had so thoroughly thought out this plan, and it doesn't work because their own plan gets in the way of their plan. I mean, like if they had just used it sooner, this would have all been over. But now, because of that, we had such a dreadful chapter of just seeing Laura Pachica in fear throughout the entire thing. And not only that, we also got to see Nero, Noelle, and Undine all basically get bodied by Megikuo and Vanica because of it. And you know what, actually speaking of Undine, when we saw that first panel after Megikuo used his curse magic on her, before I even read the text, I saw the image and I honestly thought that was Mimosa. And I got really upset because I thought in some way, even though she wasn't involved in the fight, Tabata was killing off Mimosa this way by having her be destroyed by Megikuo. But yeah, pretty much the rest of the chapter up until like the last 2 pages is just nothing but dread. Because we just see, like I said, Laura Pachica so terrified and, you know, so afraid of the fact that she's going to end up dying with each page. And Tabata, like I said, did such a great job of illustrating the emotion in her face when it came to this moment. And then we eventually do end up getting Noelle standing up and attempting to fight off against Vanica and Megikuo one last time. And you know what I said before, and I'll say it again, this arc is doing such a great job at showing just how much Noelle has grown. Because if you think back to the Vettel fight, the Noelle from back then would not have stood up again and would not have been fighting this hard. The Noelle from back then would have been just as afraid and petrified as Laura Pachica is in this chapter. But no, Noelle is so driven by the urge to avenge her mother's death, and because of the fact that she's been through so much hell already, she's, you know, been on the cusp of death multiple times throughout the series, that this isn't really phasing her, and she is still ready to go. And I really feel like that this chapter just illustrates how much Asta has rubbed off on her throughout the series, because this is exactly the kind of tenacity that Asta will be putting forward in a fight. Even when hope is lost, even when the chips are against you, Asta will still stand up until he is physically not capable to anymore and continue fighting. And that's exactly what Noelle does in the chapter. So Noelle gets upright, and in the chapter you can clearly see that she has reverted from her mermaid form back to her Valkyrie armor. And she goes in to attack Vanica, and obviously the two of them, Vanica and Megikuo, just strike at her, and they are intending to kill her because they're not really interested in her at all. They really only care about Laura Pachica right now. So they're trying to kill her off as fast as they can so they can just focus on their actual goal. And Noelle actually manages to dodge, well, not really dodge, she does take every single hit that they throw at her, but she manages to dodge just enough so that they don't hit any vital organs. And she manages to land one more attack on Vanica. Now, what's interesting is that in the chapter itself, and of course I'm sure it's going to change in the official translation, but at least in this fan translated one, they mentioned that Noelle is tactically avoiding any vital spots being hit by Vanica's attack by using her mermaid dress, which obviously she's not in that form right now. So I'm really wondering what they mean by that. Like, did we find out through this chapter that Noelle has a way to basically, even though she's in her Valkyrie armor form, that she can use the mermaid form some way, like its abilities, and somehow, like kind of like a combination thing? And I mean, it's not that unbelievable that she possibly could combine the two forms. I mean, take Fairy Tail for example. I'm not sure if it was actually in the main series or not, but in the sequel manga series to Fairy Tail, the main character Lucy, she has her star dresses, and she's actually able to combine 2 to 3 of them in order to actually gain access to all 3 powers at once and basically give herself that much of a power boost. We could see Noelle end up doing the same thing, and it'll possibly end up having the same drawback as when Lucy does this in Fairy Tail. It basically drains all her magic, so she basically can't move or do anything after she does it. Could have the same effect with Noelle. Now, at the end of the chapter, we see Noelle strike Vanica, and it's kind of like that faraway silhouette type of attack where we see her strike her, and it's kind of intended to look like she finished the job. But I'm pretty sure that at the next chapter, we're going to end up finding out that her attack didn't really do anything. Noelle's going to be knocked out for the count, and all this is really going to end up achieving is that now that they are done with Laura Pachica, Vanica and Megikuo are going to become more interested in Noelle and give her basically, or give Vanica a reason to want to fight Noelle later on in the arc. Which is pretty much what I'm sure all of us have been expecting to happen. We knew that Vanica is going to be Noelle's personal opponent for the arc, just like how we knew that Dante was most likely going to end up being Asta's, and obviously Zeno was going to end up being Yuno's. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it for me for this video. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, drop me a like, subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. Comment down below what you thought about this chapter. I want to see if anyone was as like anxiety and fearful while reading each page of this chapter as I was. So let me know in the comment section down below. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys next week. Peace.